All right, so our first slide has a picture of an elder woman holding a smartphone and a word bubble that says tweet. Our goal is to help you all understand what it takes to have an effective social media campaign. I'm not the world's foremost expert on accessibility, but I can share with you what I know so far. With social media and any technology, it's a moving target. What I show you guys today may not be true next week or even tomorrow as things are updating. The good news is a lot of social media is starting to get more accessible and having alt text underneath photos and things like that. Larger screens available, and captioning for videos is getting more and more popular, since a lot of people watch videos when they're not supposed to and watch it with the sound off. So that's the good news there. Just a little bit about me before we start. So my expertise is in communications. I've spoken at other national and local conferences regarding social media tactics and how to reach people. I'm not a techie person, but I think I know how to communicate with people. So that's been my number one. And Mark will be assisting me in the parts about plain language. He just walked in, so I'm gonna put him on the spot. Just kidding. The first step in creating our campaign is finding our community, because we could create all this cool stuff, but if we don't know exactly who we're talking to, it's not gonna make a difference. So if the community are largely Spanish speakers, then we know we need to develop our campaigns in Spanish. If we know our community are people who need materials in Braille or a different format, then we need to make sure that that's available as well. Two is finding the right channel, and that's what particular social media network or outlet works best. They all function differently. I run campaigns with almost identical information through all different channels, and different information is received differently. It's just interesting. Three is engage your audience. I'll talk more about the tactics and things that I do to get people engaged. And four is actually developing the campaign. So the first one, finding the community, is an icon with different people and a network. The second one is a laptop with a globe showing. Engaging your audience, I used an icon of different hands huddling. And the third one, developing the campaign, I used a playbook as the graphic. Find your community. So the graphic in this is just silhouettes of different people, some older, some younger, a person in a wheelchair, a person using canes. So the first question is, who are you hoping to reach? What age group? What accessible format will you be needing? Other unique characteristics. Like I said, if you know your audience speaks Spanish or another language, or just has this cultural nuance about them, you want to know about that. So finding the right channel. I specifically used a picture of an older woman for my promos for this, because I think the stereotype of social media users is maybe like a teenager on their cell phone, but you'll find that people 50 and over are on Facebook. So it says 65% of people ages 50 to 64 are on Facebook. And people over 65, 41% are on Facebook. So it's pretty clear that Facebook is, if you don't have any social media yet for your organization, at least start with Facebook. They said that, I know my data might be outdated, but if Facebook were a country, it would have a population, I think, right between China and India. It's at least 1 billion people on the planet already. So a few more social media cliff notes. I'm not going to dive too deep, because I know not every organization has the ability to invest in all of the social media, but if you have a unique niche that you need to reach, you should probably know which one is going to serve that purpose. So for example, as we talked about Facebook, if you don't have Facebook, it's the one to start with, at least, since 68% of US adults are on there. And 3/4 of the people who use Facebook use it on a daily basis. Instagram, if you don't have Instagram, but you don't serve anyone under 24, that's understandable. But when it comes to even elder abuse awareness, the people who need to get that information are not just the elders, right? I mean, it's all of us. It's going to take all of us to make a difference in that issue. So maybe we do need to reach out to youth and say, this is something we need to pay attention to. These are our parents and our grandparents' generations. So the people on Instagram access that, 51% access it daily. And then Twitter is a great way to follow trending topics and like-minded organizations. Nowadays, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram all has the ability to use alt text for photos. Because before, you would just post a photo and a screen reader may or may not know what's in the photo. Half the time it's like person smiling and you get no context. All those funny memes, you don't get the joke, you don't get to be involved in that. So when it comes to alt text, which I'll go into later, it means you're describing what's in the photo for someone who may not be able to see it. And then we talk about YouTube. It reaches more 18 to 34-year-olds and 18 to 49-year-olds than any cable network in the US. Yeah, anyone under, I don't know, 25, they're not watching TV anymore. They're watching influencers playing video games on YouTube channels. It's amazing. The people who've become overnight celebrities in like this younger generation are watching people play video games. I don't know. This is not my generation anymore. I have no idea. A few more cliff notes about the other social media. Anyone in here have a LinkedIn account?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So LinkedIn is all about networking with your niche. For some people who are not comfortable doing Facebook because they feel like it's too personal or they're just afraid, I don't know. Some people are very personal and they don't want to put that out there. I always say start with LinkedIn. At least it's like a professional business card, you know. If you're in the business of networking, like I think everyone in this room is, like we benefit from connecting with one another and utilizing each other's resources. LinkedIn has been a great way for us to connect with national disability groups, assistive technology experts, systems change advocates, in different ways that we wouldn't normally with our regular circles of people. So what's unique there is they have niche groups and things. I think there's even an elder abuse kind of group of people who are concerned with that issue. So you can find issues-based folks right there. And it's just, I feel a little safer. I know it's getting a little spammy with people just kind of friending each other for the sake of marketing purposes. But in my experience, it's nice to meet someone in a professional setting and then be able to remember their name and have a face to remember. So usually if I get someone's business card, the first thing I'll do is try to make sure that they're on LinkedIn and I can connect with them. So I can put a face to the name. I'm a visual learner. So for me, that's what helps me. Pinterest. How many of you guys have Pinterest? Anyone on the line? Let's see. I didn't get Pinterest, I'll tell the truth. I didn't get it till I was planning a wedding, since that's the thing we do, apparently.
Me too.
And then later on, when you have a kid, it's like what to do when your baby's colicky, or recipes is what I'm finding out. 41% of women are on. If you deal with assistive technology, our Ability Tools program is all about assistive technology. And there's a lot of cool stuff on Pinterest regarding that, since it's such a visual medium. And when people are shopping for their assistive technology, they want to see things, kick the tires, and it's a big investment for people with disabilities. So a lot of the times they do a lot of research before they purchase something. So that's one of those things. I didn't know until I started this job. And the next one is Snapchat. Now, who in the room has a Snapchat?
I used to.
So Jamie has Pinterest. Jamie has Snapchat too, I know that. So Snapchat, 78% of youth ages 18 to 24 are on, and the numbers are growing. So Snapchat is the one where you can send a photo and it disappears after a day for some of the feeds. I'm like, young people, please help. For some, I think some of the things that you can send, they'll last a day, and some of them are just, it lasts minutes or something. 10 seconds. 10 seconds? 10 seconds. There you go. And then there's all these cool filters where you can make your face look a doggy, or like it adds makeup to your face if you don't have makeup on. It's very helpful. So what are those things? So if you're wondering where people all got these funny photos when their faces are like turned into doggies, it came from Snapchat, but Instagram and Facebook pretty much copied soon thereafter. So you're able to do those things on Facebook and Snapchat too. So the image is an Edmoji. It's an emoji we made of Ed Roberts, the founder of the independent living philosophy. So we made an Edmoji of him with his goatee and his sip and puff straw. And we've got a word bubble that represents disability as a strength. That's one of his quotes. So when I say engage your audience, my rule number one is be true to your brand and mission. So for our organization, we are all about independent living. And so Ed Roberts, who founded the independent living centers here in California, he's kind of our totem or our mascot of everything we do. So when we use his image, it's kind of true to our brand, right? So for us, that's relevant and that's consistent. We always, every June 23rd or January 23rd, you can count on us to post something, or our youth group always has some sort of poster or promo talking about Ed Roberts. So that's just our example. Follow, tag, and share. We always tag and share things that correspond to California law or something with disability rights. And when they share something, we try to retweet and share the things that they post out. The Silk shares great stuff, so we try to share and post the things that they post. The strength of our network is really what helps us have followers, because then we can't create content all the time. We all have busy jobs, and so we have to rely on each other and follow each other and just share each other's content since we're all here at the table. Oh, we have a note from Jamie. She said there's a new social media called TikTok.
Yes.
I am not involved yet, so I think another one I'll have to learn. So Jamie's got everything. Keisha's got Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram, WhatsApp. Jamie says TikTok. She can show me how to use it perfect. This is why I make friends with young people, because I am slowly getting older and not knowing these cool things. All right, so influencers. This is another huge thing. Knowing who the influencers are of your particular issue is huge. I just recently found out someone in our office is connected to Casey Kasem's daughter. And Casey Kasem, as you probably already know, died because of neglect and issues regarding elder abuse. And so his daughter has been a huge advocate and has her own podcast regarding elder abuse. And hopefully we can connect with her and collaborate. She would definitely be an influencer. Unfortunately, you know how the world goes. If you have a celebrity status, more people pay attention to the issue. So if we can connect with her, that would be great. And then relevant news sources. Like I said, we can't generate all the content ourselves. A lot of times we just have to follow stories and news headlines from issues that our audience cares about. So that's a lot of the content we at CFILC share is through the news sources that we trust. Okay, this is one of my favorite. It's a New York Times or New Yorker cartoon with a therapist, a male therapist with another male patient laying on a couch. And the quote says, "Let's try focusing on the posts that do receive comments." And the cartoonist is Warren Sutton. Best practices for engagement. So be visual. This is an example of a promo we did for a blog. We collaborated with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. Our Ability Tools blog always features different kinds of assistive technology. I mean, there's so many different kinds that people don't realize that folks with autism also have different modalities that they use or technologies that they use. And so we collaborated with Noor Pervez, and he shared with us, I think 5 gadgets or apps that he likes to use. This photo was really instrumental for us. As you can see, Noor is a real person. We didn't use a stock photo. There's an authenticity about using real people. A lot of times if you use pretty stock photos, they might be beautiful and high resolution, but you notice when you're on your feed, you just kind of go past it because it looks like an ad if it doesn't look like a real person. So I always say try to use photos of real people when you can, especially people you really work with, people who are really in your work. I know some of us work in like crime regarding issues of justice, and there's HIPAA compliance and other sensitive issues. So I know it poses a challenge, but wherever you can celebrate someone, then that's an opportunity to use a real photo. All right, so number 2 is a huge one, be accessible. So for us at CFILC, we always use image descriptions for visuals. We do that as much as we possibly can. I try my best to even ask people for an image description when I ask them for their photo, because you never know. Nor, for example, last year used she, her pronouns, and this year uses he, him pronouns. And so the way he describes himself is important. You know, your own identity is important to you. And so you want to know that. You'd want to caption the photo appropriately. 80% of engagement is mobile. So that's one thing to know is when you're choosing a photo, you may not want it to be too busy. You may not want to have too many things to focus on in the photo. If someone's just looking at their phone, you know, they don't want to have to zoom in and kind of look around in the photo. So I try to choose dynamic images that are just, you know, kind of one idea, 3 at most. And the third thing is to be responsive. I know this is tricky for me. CFILC has about 5 main programs, and all 5 of the programs have at least Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram each. And then we have a Silence Equals Violence social media, and that has Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram also. So it's really hard to respond to everyone, but I really try to at least click like when someone comments on anything. And the last thing is don't feed the trolls, if anyone knows what that is. The anonymity of the internet makes it very easy for people to feel emboldened to say negative things to people or try to tear them down. And so we try to ignore a lot of negative feedback. Sometimes we engage. We'll say, thank you for your comment, and try to be as positive as possible. Sometimes it's appropriate to delete it. A lot of times we try not to, especially if they're asking a really pertinent question. For example, for CFILC, we value a discourse about differences in disability identity, or you know, we like to have discussions with our clients, or not clients, or our community. So sometimes we don't delete things that are potentially controversial because we want that conversation to be on our feed. Oh, cool. Jamie's sharing some celebrity influencers in the disability community. She says Chelsea Hill is a famous wheelchair dancer, and she knows her. Look at that. I think she's one of the Rolettes. They're kind of like the Rockettes for wheelchair users. Okay, Mark, this is your part.
Oh, all right. Well, this is the boring page, as you can tell. So this page, which is going to be really a brief overview, brings us back to when we learned to write back in elementary, junior, middle school, high school. So when it comes to federal agencies, it all began formally in 2010 with the Plain Writing Act of 2010, which President Obama signed into law. With that, it basically in one sentence states that federal agencies are to use clear communication that the public can understand and use. It sounds obvious. However, plain writing and plain language is extraordinarily difficult, time-consuming, and some people consider it painful. 3 of those subcomponents are really simply concise, and if I want to say it, and that's true for myself as well, concise, concise, concise. So as an example, the slide that I gave Kyla, and I should know better, was just smeared with words. And this was drilled down. And it's correct. It's to the point. Number 2, writing is to be organized. This brings me back to, you know, English teachers in middle school giving me a C or a B and telling the big red letters. Organize our writing. So many of us will start if we have something to, and we will just think about it as we're typing. And that's really not the way. It's to organize our thoughts with an outline first, and then commit to paper. I want to talk a little bit about that. And then the most important of all of this is that it is appropriate for the intended audience, which forces us to really learn what is the literacy level of our intended audience? What is their knowledge level of the subject? Many of us, and we're all guilty of it, write, assuming our colleagues are going to be reading it, or people have a similar understanding that we have about whatever the content is. And it's absolutely, absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. And we've learned it firsthand on multiple projects over the years where we've literally had to take video series and literally throw them away and start over from the beginning, whether it's about visual or whether it's about the written word. But there was a point I wanted to make a reference to what Kyla said earlier about photographs. We actually did a series of projects for DDS over many years, and we started by using stock photos. And again, that comes under the large caption of plain language. And when we tested them, they didn't respond. The intended audience were people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and they didn't respond. And the reason why they didn't is they said it looks like a commercial or a TV show. And what their words were, and this was back in 2005 and 7, is that it didn't look like me. The words didn't sound like me. And we literally had to take 15 videos, all supporting materials, literally 100% throw them away and start over and go back into the community and photograph. And what came through were photos like the one that you showed, a little grittier, not as clear, but it reflected everyday living, something that's relatable, and that's also true with written language. The key to all of this that we've learned through pain ourselves over the years and still make mistakes is the one, if anything, is how do we know? That's the one key question. How do we know what we've written, what we're producing, what we're sending out, the photograph affects the intended audience? And the only way that you really know is by having 100% engagement of representatives of your intended audience in all steps of development. There are quite a few plain language services, translation services, especially here in Sacramento. We've engaged a lot of them over the years. It is the one element that most do not do. So, and not to pick on State Council or DDS, I know you folks worked with all of you. It's having people there who help you put that together, or this is what we want to say. What would it sound like? What are the important words? What should it look like? You know, I have a tendency to use way too much color. And being plain is much easier for people to get the point, and also the words. We've learned over time to use as few multisyllabic words. And this is even the general population as well.
What is multisyllabic?
Many syllables. Yeah, and I would argue it. And so a couple of points, and then this is not designed as a training, it's just a tip sheet. Write for your reader and not yourself, it's obvious, but we all have a tendency to write in what I call the back room or our own office. And we say, well, it looks plain. And we then give it to our colleague who will say, yeah, that looks okay. That we're missing the most important step, and that's a representative or groups of people. State the major points up front. Now, we all know this from school. I'm absolutely 100%. I forget it every time I sit down and I just start writing and have to go back and say, what am I trying to say in that paragraph? Stick to the topic, don't digress, no additional information, keep it clean, keep it simple. And which doesn't mean, and this is a horrible term that's used, unfortunately, out there, is dumbing it down. Plain language is not that at all. It's really about comprehension and about usability.
Dr. Kripke just said that in the comments too.
What?
One key issue is that plain language doesn't mean dumbing down the content.
Not at all. It's about usability. And if all of us are in healthcare one way or another, it's really critical that we begin to look at stats around healthcare, health literacy. The bottom line is the general population is health illiterate, meaning that given a bottle, a prescription bottle, that they really could not read the medication and the dosage accurately. General population. So, and then there's a lot of data, and one day, if you want, we can actually delve into that and bring an expert in health literacy, because that really is a core area of what all of us are focusing on. Write in the active voice, always in proactive, short sentences. If you think they're short, keep looking for words to eliminate. Of course, it has to make sense and be grammatically correct. If you're not sure, ask for clarity from someone who's not as engaged. Read the sentence to somebody, even in your office, and ask them, is there a way to shorten it? They're going to give you an idea that you can use. Everyday words. All of us like to be fancy and smart. We are fancy and we're smart. And we're knowledgeable, we know our work. However, the general population, the intended audience typically does not. Everyday, ordinary words are effective. Omit the unneeded words, unnecessary words. And then most of all, when it comes to a lot of information, bullets. Bullets and lists are your friend. It forces us to eliminate extraneous wordage and verbiage. And then have a colleague, and again, going back to someone who would actually be reading the information and using it to check it over before you distribute it, send it out. There are 3 sources I can give you to look at for references. Plainlanguage.gov is a treasure chest. It's been up there for 9 years. CDC, if you just type in CDC plain language, there's pages and pages and pages on health literacy, everything from data to samples to templates. It really is the richest source to go to. And Vera Institute of Justice has some great papers out, and Kyla has some of those, and when we send this out, we can send those reference sheets out as well. So between all of that, there's enough of a guide without becoming overwhelmed on ways in which we communicate effectively. That's it.
Great, thank you. Next. So as Mark was saying, how do we know that this photo was successful? For us, it was one of our more popular posts. It helped that we partnered with ASAN, or the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, since they shared it as well. We call that boosting in social media, where we could boost each other's stuff and make sure it goes out further. Because we all have kind of unique niches. We don't all have the same exact clientele sometimes, so it helps get things out further. 5,483 impressions. And what impressions means is how many eyeballs actually saw this come through the feed. So it reached that many people. We had 3,848 impressions through Twitter. And for us, we get like maybe 300 to 500 impressions for any given tweet. So that means this one was seen, really better compared to the other ones. And then our Instagram is still growing. By no surprise, our youth organizing Disabled and Proud program, which is for youth ages 16 to 28, their Instagram is way beyond any of our other programs, just because of the nature of who's on. So like I said before, if we put different content on different mediums and different channels, obviously the one that gravitates towards youth through Instagram is always going to perform better than our other issues. So, and the other tip is have fun. Here's Ed again. I was actually creating Valentine's Day cards for our staff, and we thought, let's make Ed Roberts like Ryan Gosling style meme. Ryan Gosling, as you know, is like this heartthrob celebrity, and he always has this like, hey girl, I like the way you're smashing the patriarchy, or whatever the case may be. So we thought we'd use Ed Roberts as our muse for Valentine's Day. And I was just intending to print it for our office to get a good laugh. And people said, we should use this as a fun social media thing. And so we did. And again, this one did pretty well because it was funny and people can relate. They know who Ed Roberts is. And they knew he's got this kind of sense of humor that he might say these kind of things. So the caption says, roses are red, violets are blue, the fight for disability rights continues with you. So a lot of it was just, it was safe stuff. It's not going to be racy. It's like, how can we take an issue that's, we've said this to so many different ways. How can we say it a little differently and have fun with it and use Valentine's Day as a fun way to launch this? So we put it out there. We made it so that people could print it on cardstock if they want and cut it and give it to their friends, or just share the meme on their social media or send it to someone. And this one, as you can see, it did pretty well. It didn't do as well as the ASAN blog promo, but it was just kind of fun to share throughout the week of Valentine's Day. Weigh in when it matters. So earlier this year, Dr. Phil had a guy in a wheelchair and his wife on the show, or a few couples. I didn't watch it, but he made the comment 100 times out of 100, relationships where, I don't know if he said the man is in a wheelchair and the woman is.
One person is in a wheelchair.
One person's a wheelchair and one person's the caretaker. 100 times out of 100, the relationship will fail. He said that directly. And so the internet, which is such an interesting thing, because our disability community, in my experience, we will clap back like with the speed of nothing I've ever seen. But the beautiful thing is 100 out of 100 became a hashtag, and people were sharing their relationship photos, pictures of their weddings. We took a picture. I just took a picture with our Instagram feed of how many people were using that 100 out of 100 hashtag. So this picture is actually a screenshot that I had just taken when the hashtag started going viral. And then we shared that as an image, and then people responded. People commented with their own photos. We had this whole, like, it took on a life of its own. People wanted to celebrate their love with their relationship and say, hey, actually, we're both disabled and we help each other. It's like, this is what marriage is, or a partnership is, you help one another. But what was amazing is 198,000 impressions, almost 200,000 people weighed in from all over the world, really. But it was such a cool way to say, okay, Dr. Phil, you don't really know anything. Yeah, we're here and we're loud and proud. And it was just a beautiful way to clap back. It's like, one, you don't know anything. And it was a great way of showing disability pride in a new way. And people were really just like willing to share. So next year's Valentine's Day may be like a collage of beautiful photos that we got from people. All right, what is a hashtag? This is the question everyone wants to know, but no one wants to ask because it seems so basic that it's embarrassing to ask, but it's a very important question to ask. So a hashtag categorizes content. So it'll tell you the theme of content. Like if it's about elder abuse, I use hashtag elder abuse just because somebody who's looking for information on elder abuse might look for something using that hashtag. It also makes those few words a hyperlink so that you can click the word within that hashtag to filter and track other things that will be related to that issue. It's also a way to follow and be followed. Before you go on, the photo is a bird chirping, and there's hashtags and speech bubbles with all the different icons of social media companies.
Question in the chat that wants to know how you find those numbers of your impressions.
That's a good question. It depends on the outlet that you use. I can talk about that after this slideshow. Analytics is its whole other beast. If you guys are interested, analytics might even be like a 2.0 version of this particular talk, because there's a lot involved with that, with measuring. Hashtag etiquette. So I've got do's and don'ts. Do your research. You may not be the only one using the acronym. Scary story. Sometimes you'll have a conference and say, oh, I'll just use the acronym of my conference. And then no one looks it up and you find out there's something super inappropriate that same acronym shares. You don't want to be the last one to know when it's like the day of your conference and you put all the banners with the hashtag that's supporting something you don't want to be a part of. Be consistent. A lot of times people have different ideas about what should be a hashtag. You just got to agree on one or three and move forward. Don't use punctuation or spaces. I know grammar geeks hate this part, but if you add punctuation or spaces, it just undoes what you're trying to do. So don't use more than 3 hashtags unless you're on Instagram, is what I say. With Instagram, that's how we get our followers. We just kind of cast a wide net, add lots of different hashtags that kind of pertain to our brand of disability pride and disability self-advocacy, and we catch the people that want to follow us. So with Instagram, you don't have the character limits that Twitter does, so you're kind of allowed a little bit more. I know it sounds like I'm going into the weeds, but there's different ways to capture audiences depending on the different media that you're using. With Instagram, that's just how you go fishing, I guess you could say. ILCon 18, for example, was our independent living conference of 2018. I don't think it's my favorite, but that's what we ended up with. A lot of times, I've done PR for public health for many years. A lot of times they love using acronym and year. It's like, that's good, but next slide, we'll talk about why that's not the best thing. So rules of the hashtag, you want it to be memorable, not just a brand name. You want it to make sense, short and simple, research, research, research. So you're not using an acronym that's something inappropriate. Relevant, use it everywhere, and consistent. So something that people might remember, for example, CFILC is working with the California Census. We're starting to use the hashtag disability counts California, I think, but that resonated more for our people to say disability counts, because it's quick, it's simple, it resonates, it is, you know, it represents what we're trying to accomplish without using like DCAQ 2019, and then no one remembers what it is, and then you get it wrong. So developing a campaign. Some of this we've gone through. So the first thing to do is research who is the audience. So if we were to do a silly Valentine's Day post, if it's for social media, you can kind of guess if it's for Instagram, it'll veer younger. But as you saw the demographics of Facebook, it could be anybody. So depending on who you want to reach, you can think about which way do you want to do that. We'll go through an action plan that helps you look at the whens, the wheres, and the how to get what you want done. And then the communication step, which is executing the plan. And then 4 is the evaluation, which we're talking about some analytics. I'll kind of take a dip into it, but it's not a deep dive. And we can go on about that separately. Step 1 is research. Who do you need to reach, as we mentioned, and how does this audience get their information? So I learned some communities still go to their libraries or their churches to get information. When I was working in public health to reach the Black audience of Sacramento, we went to barbershops to talk about tobacco cessation tactics. Because you know, you have to learn what's the hub of information for different populations. 2, develop an action plan. So some of us here at the table are probably posting out for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. The national, I think it's a National Council on Aging based out of USC, developed an entire toolkit with graphics that are really cool already and ready to go. And they look like this. I guess the official colors of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day are purple and teal. There's an icon of 2 people making a heart, and there's a globe, and says World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, building strong support for elders, lifting up voices 2019. Some of the questions I would ask when you're developing your action plan is, which social media channels will you use? If you have ever used Snapchat, you can actually buy a filter for Snapchat if you have an event. So the people who attend your event can take a picture with the filter on it. So it could say World Elder Abuse Awareness Day in the filter of the photo. If that's something that's relevant for your group, if you want to target just young people at a specific event and get them involved in taking care of their grand folks or what have you. I had a friend who was working on getting elders to vote with them. And I think it was like a hashtag, take grandma to the poll with you. And people used it as a great opportunity to take photos, selfies with their grandparents, you know, at the voting place. So it was a cool way to participate in civic action and then help make sure we had everybody accounted for. How often will you contact beforehand? I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I'll post a media story, and then Christina, who doesn't see our feed, will share the same story. And that you would think, oh, good, then more people will see the same story. No, people will get annoyed and say, you shared that already, delete, unfollow. Unfortunately, yeah, people are, I mean, you know what it's like to be a follower on social media. If you don't like something, you unsubscribe. So timing of things is important. How soon do you want to tell people about an event? How often do you want to let them know? Can you go live? For CFILC, our rule is if we don't have captioning or an ASL interpreter, we don't do it, unfortunately. So a lot of opportunities to take live video are lost because we have a commitment to making things accessible for as many people as possible. One trick that we've used is if you know you'll have an ASL interpreter at an event, you can position your camera to have the ASL interpreter in the view of the video. Then that's one way around it. So then you still have ASL in the video. Communication. So executing the plan, schedule and follow. When you're doing your campaign, like we mentioned, you want to know who are the other stakeholders. Do they have Instagram accounts? Do they have Facebook? Do you want to collaborate with them beforehand and say, hey, I'm sharing this out. Do you want to share it after I share it? Or do you want to share it first and then I'll repost? Depending on who has the bigger network, sometimes it's a better idea to have the person who has the bigger network share it first and then everyone else share from there. The photo is an elder man with his, I'm guessing, son and grandson at a table, and they look like they're drinking coffee. This is one of the not stock images, one of the images for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. It's one of many photos that they have available if you want to use them for your social media. I know not everyone has time to create stuff, so it's always nice when there's toolkits pre-made for you. All right. So as I mentioned, tag your partners. That's a great way to increase your analytics and increase your impressions or how many eyeballs actually see. And so for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, their hashtag is WEAAD 2019 this year. So that's the hashtag we're using. Our last step is evaluation. How'd you do? And the photo is an evaluation. And there's a red check mark at the box that says outstanding. The other options were very good, satisfactory, marginal, and unsatisfactory. What did you learn for the next campaign?